Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege, as it is every day, to have you guys joining me here as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, a little bit TV, maybe some other stuff as well. And here's how today's show is going to go, guys. I have picked out 3 impressive topics that you guys have emailed into me to let me know this is what you want talked about. How do you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's real simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. And this is important, guys. Make sure you put that word topic in the subject line so I know that it's for the show. And also keep your emails as short as possible. Absolutely 90 words or less. After we get through these 3 topics, I will go over to the live chat. You can send a live chat via the super chat. It guarantees you get a question on one of the shows. And also, it's a great way to support the channel. I thank you guys who participate in that. All right. With that out of the way, let's dive into it with topic number 1. And the first topic today comes to us from Giovanni Conti, who writes, I read that the new tracking numbers for Black Panther are now around $170 million. This is clearly a big jump over the initial numbers of $120 million. Do you think it could exceed even those numbers and maybe become only the 5th movie to cross the $200 million opening weekend? How crazy would that be? Thanks, and passi mio, fratello, italiano. Well, grazie, fratello. Yeah, so this new number just came out for Black Panther, of course, opening this weekend. And now there are estimates saying that they're kind of expecting this thing to hit $170 million opening weekend. Now, one of the things we have to keep in mind here, and you're probably going to hear this number, 170 million opening, 170 million opening, being bantied around a lot over the next couple days. Something important to keep in mind here is that 170 million they're throwing out isn't opening weekend numbers, it's opening long weekend numbers. Because it's, I always lose track of the American holidays, even though I live here. It's President's Day or something on Monday. So they're counting on a 170 million 4-day weekend as opposed to the regular long weekend. I think the regular weekend, they've upped the numbers as well, and I think they're upping it to around $140 to $150 million for its opening weekend, which would beat Deadpool for largest first initial standalone superhero film. I think it'll break several other records, but they're talking about 170 overall. So if it does hit 200 million on the long weekend, that doesn't necessarily break the record or become the 5th film, because when you're only talking about opening weekends, even though Deadpool opened on one of those long weekends as well, if you look up the official numbers for Deadpool's opening weekend, it only counts the standard weekend. It doesn't count the extra day. So yes, 170 million is what they're projecting for the long weekend. For the regular weekend, I think they're still upping the projection again to about 130, 140, which is way up from the 100, 110 of where they thought it could initially be. This movie is going to get amazing word of mouth. It's going to get amazing word of mouth. So I expect to see a pretty solid Sunday for this movie, because I think a lot of people are going to see it Friday and Saturday. They're going to be buzzing about it Friday night and Saturday. And I think you're going to see a pretty stronger than normal Sunday as well, which could carry this thing to like a full 150, maybe even north of $150 million opening weekend, which would be just primo amazing. Because if you had told Marvel a year ago, you're going to open Black Panther, and you're getting a $150 million opening weekend, they would be doing dances in the streets. They would be absolutely dancing in the streets if they were able to hit that kind of number. And you're damn right, they would be really excited about that. Now, let me just look something up that I did not look up earlier, that I probably should have looked up earlier. If I'm not mistaken, if, for whatever reason, we see, dear heavens, Black Panther is going to make more money on its opening weekend than Justice League did. That's crazy. Actually, it's going to make a hell of a lot more money opening weekend than Justice League did. That's kind of crazy to me. That's just nuts. Anyway, I just got curious about that for a second. Look, if it does get to the 170, 180 million dollar range, it won't hit 180 million dollars for its opening weekend. But if it did, it would literally make double of what Justice League made on its opening weekend. That's the state of affairs right now, folks. That's just the state of affairs and where we are. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, guys, for those of you watching, you'll notice here that The sidebar graphics are looking a little bit better. The thumbnails are looking a little bit better. My thumbnails for some of my editorial videos. And by the way, my review of the cutscene movie of Uncharted 4 is going up this afternoon, so keep your eye open for that. And there's a really good thumbnail for it. Like the thumbnail for my cutscene movie review of Uncharted 4, the thumbnail's amazing. I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. So I'll let you guys know. There are a couple of new people working with me on the John Campea channel. Just to let you know, since this graphic is up here. One of which you might recognize this handiwork, Ray. Ray Ora is now working with me here on the John Campea Show. He's going to be doing a lot of my graphics now, and it's great. Ray has been working with me ever since he was one of the first guys to be working with me in the early days of AMC. Worked with me all through AMC, all through Collider, stuff like that. He's no longer there. He's working with me now. And also helping me on some of my editorial editing and stuff like that. And editing takes up a big chunk of my time. I've got a new editor working with me. You guys might remember fact checker Jonathan, who used to do stuff with me on my old mailbag shows. Jonathan is now working with me, doing some editing for me. So I'm special welcome to Ray and Jonathan doing work with me now on my channel. It's really, really great. I've worked with both of these guys for a very long time, and I'm thrilled to have them working with me right now. So anyway, let's get on now to topic number 2. And topic number 2 comes to us from Allan Covarrubias, who writes, I just finished watching Molly's Game. I love Molly's Game, by the way. Molly's Game is just great. It was, I think, my second favorite movie of the year. Anyway, I was interested in quote-unquote Player X. I discovered it was Tobey Maguire. My opinion on Mr. Maguire has changed drastically for the worse. My question is, does Molly's Game change your view on Tobey Maguire? I love your work and keep bringing on the filthy. All right, so for those of you who maybe haven't seen Molly's Game, and if you haven't seen Molly's Game, you completely should. Molly's Game is fantastic. I love that movie. I'm a little bit, I got to admit, I'm a little bit more predisposed to liking it because I'm a big poker guy, and obviously there's a big poker focus in the movie, but it is a fantastic movie. Anyway, there's been a lot of speculation that Player X in the movie, who is this kind of this high-rolling Hollywood celebrity, remember this is all based on a true story, a high-rolling Hollywood celebrity poker player who was kind of a dick in the movie. There are some people out there who believe that that player was actually Tobey Maguire. They never say in the movie who it is. They just refer to them as Player X. And there's a bunch of people out there who believe it's Tobey Maguire. And, you know, Tobey Maguire is mentioned in the book that Molly's Game is based on. And sometimes not in the most flattering light. And that's why some people believe he was Player X. But we should be really clear here, Alan. Nobody can officially say that Player X in the movie was Tobey Maguire. Nobody has ever said that. Nobody has come out and officially confirmed that's Tobey Maguire. The film's director says, nope, it's not really based on anybody. I don't know that I believe that, but, and the subject of the film, Molly herself, has never said that Player X in the movie is Tobey Maguire. Nobody has said that. I mean, there's a lot of reason to speculate that it's Tobey Maguire, for sure. Yes, there is. But nobody has officially come out and said that Player X in the movie is Tobey Maguire. So let's be very clear about that to start. Okay, just for a minute then, let's play a game, and let's assume for a second that Player X was Tobey Maguire. And by the way, in LA, everybody knows Tobey Maguire is one hell of a poker player. He's not just a great celebrity poker player, he's a great poker player. Everybody in LA kind of knows that. Anyway, so let's assume for a second that Player X in Molly's Game was Tobey Maguire. Does it change my opinion of him? Probably not, and here's why. Does Player X in the movie do some kind of dickish things? Yep, totally does. However, you have done some really dickish things. I have done some really dickish things. Everybody watching this video right now at one point has done some really dickish things. The difference is most of us aren't celebrities and have a camera on us all the time and people writing books about us to tell everybody else about those moments that we're not at our best and we do something dickish. It happens. I generally try, unless it's, a major crime or violence against women or something like that, I try not to judge anybody for one thing they do in their worst moment. There are exceptions to that, yes. but acting like a dick, you know what? We can all come across as a dick sometimes. So would it change my opinion of Tobey Maguire, even if they came out and said, yes, we based this character on Tobey Maguire and these are based on real life things that happened? Honestly, it probably wouldn't. Now, if somebody then brought to me a mountain of other evidence to show this guy's a dick, well, maybe it'll start to change my opinion then. But even if it's Tobey Maguire, and we don't know that it is, I probably wouldn't change my opinion of him too much over like one dickish thing, because we've all done dickish things, and I try not to jump up too much about that. Again, violence against women, breaking major crimes, all that kind of stuff. There are some exceptions, but just somebody acting like a dick, I tend to give them, I'll give them a couple of passes for that before I, change my opinion of them or jump up and down too much. Anyway, just my thought. Okay, let's move on now to the final email question of the day. And the final email question of the day comes to us from Frank Gilbert, who writes, I was a big fan of the miniseries V and its subsequent one-season series. I was reading recently that the original creator has a film series in the works. I'm not sure if this is real or fake, but the article I was reading from was on Screen Rant. I was just wondering if you thought it would be possible for this franchise to work on the big screen after the recent TV reboot failure. Yeah, I watched reruns of the original series on V. And by the way, Robert Englund, that's where he got his start. Before he was Freddy, long before he was Freddy, Robert Englund was on V. And if you don't know much about V, it's about these giant alien ships show up at Earth, and they announce to the world, we're here to be friends and to help you guys and blah, blah, blah. And then you find out later there's actually a secret conspiracy they have for eating human beings as a food source. So, which is pretty major, And then this resistance forms, and the symbol of the resistance becomes the big V and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I love the miniseries. I did. I didn't really I didn't give the television series much of a chance. I think I watched a couple episodes, but never really got into it for whatever reason. I believe V could be a great feature film. I mean, it's got all the ingredients there for what could make a great blockbuster film. It's all there. And there's even a little bit of brand recognition. It's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb, though. However, I will say this. Let me throw this out there as a commentary. Screen Rant used to be one of my favorite go-to websites. Now, this is back when it was under the ownership and leadership of a guy by the name of Vic Holterman. He's the guy who founded Screen Rant. And I love Vic. I have a lot of respect for Vic, and Vic and I get along great, and he's a just super guy. Started Screen Rant right about the same time that I started the movie blog. And he did such a fantastic job with that site. Just amazing. However, he sold Screen Rant a couple years ago. And since then, I've come to learn, I don't even read Screen Rant anymore. I just come to learn it's not a site you can rely on, because what they do is Screen Rant will find the most backwater little blog that nobody reads. And if they say on that blog, Hugh Jackman's going to be the new Batman, then Screen Rant will take that as an excuse to run headlines. Hugh Jackman is the new Batman, reports say. It's like, really? Did that come from Variety? No. Did it come from this place? No. It come from a little blog that nobody's ever heard of, but they took that and ran it with it as a headline. And I find that often happens with Screen Rant. Now, as far as this particular story goes, I don't know how valid or invalid it is. I did a little bit of reading on it, and I think they're planning on doing it. And there's a production company that wants to do it, but I haven't read of any distributors picking it up yet, or any of the major distributors picking it up. So whether or not this V thing actually happens, I'm not really sure. We're going to have to wait and see. I think there are some good arguments for why it could work, though. I think there's some valid arguments for why this could work. The struggle of the television series is a concern, for sure. But a big budget, blockbuster kind of film series based on V, it's got all the right ingredients. Doesn't guarantee it'll work, but it's got all the right ingredients, and it could be pretty cool. All right, guys, those are all the main questions today. We're going to move on now to the live questions, but before we go on to the live questions, let me do my admittedly shameless plug for the thing that keeps the lights on around here, which is my Patreon campaign. Listen, guys, do me a favor. If you enjoy watching my shows, why don't you take a minute today and head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. Get all the information there, and you'll find out about 3 specific things. 1, what it means to be a Patreon supporter. Number 2, how being a Patreon supporter keeps these shows on the air and makes it possible for me to bring on guys like Ray to do, so you guys can have better graphics with this stuff. And you're going to see Ray get more involved as we go. So I can bring on guys like Fact Checker Jonathan And so I'll be able to actually produce more content because I got somebody else editing it now, which is great. I'm only able to do that because the support that you guys, my Patreon supporters, give me. So go on over there, check that out. And thirdly, find out what benefits there are to being a Patreon supporter. Join our exclusive Facebook group, get audio-only versions of our podcasts, a couple other things. So go check that out. And then maybe you'll decide to be a Patreon supporter too, which would just be aces if you do. And if you don't, that's totally fine. I'm just glad that you're a film fan with us. All right, with that out of the way now, let's head over to the live chat. And we're going to get things started on the live chat with John Campea P, who writes, Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down have almost identical premises, and both films came out in 2013. Isn't it a bit weird? And how is this even possible? Oh, that's not a new thing, though, John Campea. We've seen that before. Whether you're talking about Volcano and Dante's Peak coming out right in the same relative amount of time. Whether you're talking about Armageddon and, what was the name of the one? I keep forgetting the name of the one with Morgan Freeman. But Armageddon and that one, giant asteroid movie, is going to come and destroy the Earth. Whether it's this example of that. We've got 2 Jungle Book movies coming out within a certain period of time of each other at the same time. You know, sometimes there's a concept that hits out there, and then 2 studios want to do it, and then there becomes a race for who can get the movie out first and who can do it better. So this isn't new. It happens sometimes, and it's not the end of it. I mean, we are going to see this happen more as we move forward in the future as well. Oh, and by the way, guys, if you have not sent in a super chat yet, I'm cutting it off. Cutting it off. No more super chats. The last super chat I'm going to take is from Alan Gonzalez, who sends it in at 8:17. So Alan Gonzalez is going to be the last super chat we take. All right. Let's move on now to the next one. Orange Hand writes, what are your thoughts on those who defend Ramsay? I'm assuming you mean Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones. Defend Ramsay's actions, citing marital rape as being normal/acceptable for a medieval time period. Look, just because something was considered acceptable at some point in history doesn't mean it's free game to just engage in on screen. Not to mention, Game of Thrones does not happen in the medieval times. This is a different world and a different universe with zombies and dragons and White Walkers and wizards and, black ghosts and all this kind of thing, like black smoky ghosts who come in and, kill kings in their tents. This is not medieval times. This is a different world. I am okay. We talked about this the other day. I'm okay with them using those scenes as long as they portray them in a very negative light. And they portray the person doing them as a monster. And they don't glorify those things. Then I'm fine with it. Much like I'm fine with, hey, if you want to use a car crash where tragedy happens and people lose life. If you want to use that in a movie, as long as you don't, hey, look how cool this is. Somebody died in a car accident. As long as you don't do that, then I'm totally fine with it. As long as you don't glorify illness. As long as you don't glorify murder. I'm okay with all these human experience things being used in storytelling. But using that as an excuse seems pretty weak. It seems very, very weak. Ben Rayner writes, thoughts on Evil Dead trilogy. Are they B movies? I think there's a valid argument to be made that they're B movies. I've never talked to Sam Raimi about it. Maybe the next time I get a chance to interview him, I'll ask him about that, if he considers them to be B movies. But I think there's some very valid reasons for considering them B movies. They're great B movies. I mean, I love those films, particularly Army of Darkness. I know a lot of people like the first one or the second one best, but me, Army of Darkness is the crown jewel of the Evil Dead series. Ben Jesua writes, greetings from New Orleans, John. Well, thank you so much. I love New Orleans. Thank you for writing that in. Sujith writes, Justice League will be available for digital download soon. Are you buying your copy? Is YouTube a good platform to buy digital copies of movies? Yeah, I'll be getting it because I enjoy the film. I know, look, it's got a lot of knocks against it. It has its problems. It has its weaknesses. Yes, but I enjoyed it and I'm going to buy it. The great thing, and I buy most of my movies on Google Play, just so they're very easily accessible. I'm very plugged into the Google ecosphere, and that's neither a good nor a bad thing. I just am. I'm really plugged in. I use Google Docs for all my stuff. I use Google Drive. I use, everything is Google for me. So I use the Google Play Store. One of the great things about the Google Play Store is when I buy my movies there, I can watch them on my television, whatever, but it's also in my YouTube. It is there in my YouTube as well. And I think if you buy a movie on YouTube, I think it'll be, and then you start using Google Play, I think you'll notice those movies will be in your Google Play library as well. So yeah, I think I've never bought one of my movies directly just from YouTube. I've always bought it in the Google Play Store. but it seems to me that it would go both ways. So I've had great experiences buying my media and buying my entertainment from Google, because Google's not going anywhere. Google's not going to suddenly go bankrupt tomorrow and disappear. So I really, really, really endorse getting your digital media on Google Play. I'm sure all the other ones are great. I'm not downplaying any of the other ones, but I'm a big fan of the Google Play Store. Orange Hand writes in again, you said that George Lucas had too much creative control on the prequels. What would have been the right balance of creative control between him and others? Well, I mean, like it'll be different for every situation. But I can tell you what is never the right balance. 100% to 0. That's never the right balance. And that's why I believe that's why we saw the prequels go off the rails. Filmmaking needs to be a collaborative art form. And whether that collaboration is 85-15, 70-30, 50-50, whatever, there needs to be some checks and balances in that kind of stuff. When you don't, what you end up getting is Mother. Ugh. But John, it's a great piece of art. Yeah, it was a shitty movie. Doesn't matter if it was a great piece of art. It was just a crappy movie to watch. When you don't, you get the prequels. When everybody around you is hired exclusively to carry out your instructions, not to be a sounding board, not to tell you when something's a bad idea, things go wrong. And I remember when I had like bigger staffs and stuff like that, one of the things I'd always tell new people when I brought them on, it's like, by the way, I'm bringing you on because you're good at what you do. And that means you need to tell me if you think I'm wrong about something. And I always had this agreement with everybody who ever worked for me. I always had this agreement. And I always had this talk with everybody who started working with me. I had this agreement with them that, look, we need to make an agreement together. My part of the agreement is you are free to come into my office anytime and say anything you want and give any suggestion that you want. No matter how crazy you think it is, you can come and you can tell me if you think something that we're doing is wrong or not productive or isn't going to be effective or whatever. You have my permission to come to me anytime to do that. As long as you also give me permission, as long as I hear you out and weigh it out, to then just go ahead and not do what you wanted us to do. As long as you're okay with me telling you no sometimes, then I'm okay with you coming to me with anything you want to talk about. And like 50% of the time, people would change my minds. And that's just the way it needs to be. The minute you have 100% and you never listen to anybody else, creatively, things can go off the rails. And we've seen that happen. And I've seen it happen close up. I have friends in the film industry. I've seen that happen close up. And that's why when you hear some film fans going, studios should just give directors complete creative control because they are the creators. That's why I kind of roll my eyes. Because that sounds nice. But I've seen that it doesn't work. Filmmaking is a collaborative effort. When you have 1,000 people involved in making film. But anyway, so I don't know what the exact balance should have been with George. That's going to be different across every movie. All I know is that 100% to 0% is never the right balance. George needed to empower some people to say, I give you the power to tell me when something's a bad idea. Because all George Lucas did was surround himself with yes men. From starting with his main producer, Rick McCallum, all the way down. All anybody's job was to do is say, yes, George, and make it happen. Even if they knew it was a terrible idea, their responsibility was to say, yes, George, and make it happen. And you got to empower people to push back on you. You've got to do that. And from everything I've ever heard about it, George never empowered anybody to do that. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of things went off the rails. Sujith writes, have you watched J.A. Bayona's A Monster Calls? Loved it, even though it made me weep at the end. I was deeply moved by it. I loved that movie. I thought that movie was beautifully done, crafted. Some people thought it was like, almost like emotionally manipulative. And look, okay, I can understand why you could see it that way if you wanted to, but I just saw it as wonderfully crafted, a lot of real emotion, and like, you got to be a little bit heartless not to at least get a little, like, a little bit of tears welling up. Maybe you don't cry, but a little bit of tears welling up in the eyes, maybe a little sniffle here and there. It's a beautifully done film. I loved it. I personally, Sujit, I thought that the movie was wonderful. Aaron writes, when do your new co-host start on the show? Great question, and here's the answer. All right, this is a little behind the scenes stuff. I made the decision to get some help, and I decided to start with in front of camera help. And I went through a casting process, and I ended up getting these two fantastic, qualified, wonderful people in Danielle and Mariah. Unfortunately, whatever. But then what happened after that, and before I had them start, the last place I worked laid off a whole bunch of people that I had hired, and a whole bunch of people that had worked with me for a long time, including Ray and fact checker Jonathan. And them becoming available, I wanted to, well, I mean, look, first and foremost, they're extremely talented guys that I would be a fool not to get them to work with me. Because now that they're available, I'd be a fool not to get them to work with me. And one of the stipulations in my contract with my old workplace was I had to go if I ever left, I had to go 2 years without ever offering a job to somebody that was still working there. So I could never approach Ray and ask him to leave and come and work with me. I could never approach Jonathan and ask him to leave and come work with me. And that's understandable. That's a totally fair clause to be in any contract. But once my old employers laid them off, as well as some other people, then I was like, oh my gosh, I would be a fool not to get these guys. So I got in touch with Danielle and Mariah. I filled them in on the situation. I explained to them, hey, look, this is the reality of it. These are people who've worked with me. They've been totally loyal to me all the years that they've worked with me. One of them is my brother-in-law, Ray. For a lot of you guys don't know that Ray, the graphic guy Ray, is actually my brother-in-law. He's Anne's brother. I said, one of them is actually my brother-in-law. I need to postpone getting new on-camera talent because I really need to put what limited resources I have to help these guys out so they can come and help me out. And they were great. Danielle and Mariah were great about it. They totally understood. And I'm hoping sometime in the near future, if the channel continues to grow and all that kind of stuff, that I can bring them on again later down the road. But for right now, I have very limited resource. I can't even afford to have Ray and Jonathan on, but I decided to do it anyway. And I just decided that should be the priority. That I went with the priority behind the scenes work. And actually, my Patreon supporters, there's a level of Patreon supporters called the team level. And I had an open chat with my team level Patreon supporters. And I said, hey guys, I'm hearing that I might be able, Ray and Jonathan, these guys might become available, but I've kind of already committed to moving with these two. What do you guys as my Patreon team supporters think? Should I go with in front of the camera help or should I go with behind the camera help? And like almost 100% across the board, my Patreon team level supporters all said to me, behind the camera help. That's where you're going to get your most bang for your buck. And so I did that. And again, Danielle and Mariah were great about it, but it's going to be a little while before I get new on-camera help as well, because I went ahead and got really lucky and I was able to get Jonathan and Ray to work with me, and I'm very excited about that. And Jonathan just started and Ray just started this week, so I'm very excited about that. Fair question, Aaron. Thank you for bringing it up. All right, let's keep moving here. I'm running out of time. Edgar Navarro writes, good morning. I was lucky enough to see Black Panther last night, which is amazing. Did you listen to the soundtrack from the film? Did you enjoy it? Well, I haven't heard I heard the soundtrack several times in the movie, and I love the soundtrack. I haven't heard it separately. I've got a couple of tracks from it, but I haven't heard the whole soundtrack. And yeah, I dig the soundtrack. I dig it a lot. I think it's getting a little overpraised. I think it's very good, and I enjoy it a lot, especially a couple of the tracks. I don't think it's the soundtrack of the year or anything like that, like some people are making out to be, but I think it's very, very solid. Calvin writes, John, how do you feel about the Grand Tour, Top Gear, etc.? I like these car shows that focus on entertainment, not car infomercials. Love the show. I don't watch a lot of it. I was very intrigued by the whole drama that went on between, I think Top Gear might be the #1 TV show in the world, if I'm not mistaken. At least it was. But I was intrigued by the drama that went on when they fired the host of Top Gear, and then the other host said, well, then we're out too. And now those three hosts have all gone on and they're doing this new show that's almost identical called Grand Tour. I've only seen a couple of episodes of everything, and I enjoyed it. It's a kick. I'm not a big car guy. I'm not a car enthusiast like most real men are, but I'm not. So I'm not really into them, but I was fascinated by the behind-the-scenes drama that went on with all this stuff. If you guys have never heard of that, look up this behind-the-scenes drama, because it's fascinating. You could make a movie about what happened here. You could honestly make a movie about what happened here. Mr. Hank Dunn writes, Thoughts on School of Rock? Like it very much. Actually, Ann and I are going to be going to see a live stage show of it at the Pantages Theater here in Los Angeles. It's a musical stage show now, and we're actually going to be going to see it pretty soon. Mr. Hank also follows up, better action star, Tom Cruise or The Rock? I'll go The Rock. He just epitomizes some of those key elements of what an action star should be, which is of loads of charisma. Tom Cruise has charisma, make no mistake about it. Tom Cruise is also a better actor, make no mistake about it. But as a pure action star, The Rock is genetically bred to be an action star. And so I'll go that way. Almost in every other way, I'll go Tom Cruise, but as an action star, I'll go The Rock. Sujith writes, hey John, what's your opinion on preservation of existing original film? Is it too costly to do as opposed to digital conversion? Here, in general, I'm all about digital conversion. However, if you have some of those original reels of like classic films, those things are history. And I'm all for trying to preserve like history. Like if I could get my hands on the original film reel of one of the original prints that went out to theaters of Star Wars in 1977, I can only imagine what that would be worth, as emotionally and monetarily. So I'm all for digital conversion moving forward, but yeah, I'm also all for preserving history. Not because I'm like Quentin Tarantino that I think everything should be filmed. No, everything should be digital. But those things are history, and I believe in, if you can preserve them by all means. Raymond Verata writes, what do you think of Hannah Simone, New Girl, and Killing Gunther, leading ABC's new Greatest American Hero and the show itself? Well, first of all, Hannah Simone is flat out one of the most gorgeous women in the world. And a lot of people would always say that she looked like somebody else who used to work with me. But hold on a second, if you're not sure who Hannah Simone is, she plays Jess's best friend on New Girl. And she is absolutely like stupid stunning. Like there's attractive and then there's like stupid attractive. And Hannah Simone is like stupid attractive. This isn't even nearly a good picture of her. This picture doesn't even do her justice. It's just the one I could grab most quickly. And she's really funny and really talented on the show. So if they decided that Greatest American Hero was going to be about a woman who finds the suit as opposed to a guy who finds the suit, great. And it's going to be really cool to see her break out, because a lot of these actors who play side supporting characters on these sitcoms, you never see them do anything else. It's really great to see somebody who's really talented like her maybe get a shot at leading her own show. So I will be interested to seeing it. I'm excited about it. The Crone Doggy writes, Friday releases often start at 6 p.m. Thursday. Why does that count for a Friday box office? I get it for midnight release, but 6 p.m. makes for an extra day. Well, I mean, technically speaking, I say, believe me, Crone Doggy, I've thought the same thing. Technically speaking, hey, if you don't get all the matinees in, then it's not really a full day. Because, like, especially on weekends, those matinees make a lot of money. And it doesn't. I've often wondered about that because, first it started with midnight screen. It's just a couple of years. This brand new thing of Thursday at midnight. Even though it opens Friday, but we're going to open it Thursday midnight at 12:01 or Friday morning at 12:01 a.m. Just a couple of years ago, that was a new thing. Not many years ago. And then there were 11 o'clock screenings and 10 o'clock. Now 7. Now you see in some places 6. Most of the time it's still 7. But until they full-fledged make Thursday the opening day where it can have earlier in the day screenings, I'm cool with them calling it part of the weekend. It is a great question, though. It's something I've wondered about, and I would love to talk to some studio heads. I'll never get a chance, I'm sure, but to really find out what's the rationale behind that? How does it work? Why does it work that way? It's a great question. Chad Van Sico writes, do studios factor in quality of previous film when assessing the health of a given genre? Example, people must hate anime adaptations because if Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, of course. I mean, look, there are many things that studios will take into consideration when contemplating the future of anything. Quality of a previous film and how that previous film was received are definitely factors in that. They're not the only factors, but they're definitely factors in that. So, but also the bigger thing is also money. So when the studios sit back and say, okay, should we do another version of this? Well, the last one was terrible. The audience hated it and nobody came out and watched it. That's something they look at. And that's definitely played against Dragon Ball Z heavily. And I still believe a Dragon Ball Z movie would not make that much money. I just don't. I know everybody gets mad at me for saying that. And I'm not poo-pooing on Dragon Ball Z. I'm not saying anything negative about Dragon Ball Z. Like, I love Supernatural. I love it. It's one of my favorite shows on television for the past 10 years. But I'm going to be honest and say I don't think it would work as a movie. I don't think anybody would go see it as a movie. I don't think more people would go see a Dragon Ball Z movie than would go see a Supernatural movie. But the principle is the same. You know what I'm saying? So those are definitely things. The things you're mentioning are things that definitely come into consideration. Amin writes, Tough Beats, any news on female co-hosts? Love Ray. Well, you probably wrote that before I answered the previous question, so I already answered that question. Thanks a lot, Amin. John, many years back, have you ever heard of the fan casting from people wanting Brock Lesnar to play Eddie Brock because of his looks? Thank God, no. Well, I mean, it goes to a pet peeve I have. I do have a pet peeve when my fellow film fans say, this guy should play the role. And I go, heaven's sakes, why? Because he looks like him. I've never understood that mentality. Because he looks like, that's what's going to make the movie good? That'll make for a good poster. That won't make the movie any better. He looks like him. No, Hugh Jackman did not look like Wolverine. All right? I mean, they do what they do, and now he has become what we believe and what we look at as Wolverine. Look, all other things being equal, if you get two actors of the same talent level and they're on the same hot streak with their careers and everything is totally equal, and one looks more like the character than the other, sure, then go with that. Make that a all other things equal thing. But I've never understood in this Brock Lesnar thing, and I remember the Brock Lesnar thing. It's like, this guy can't act for squat. But he looks like you'd think he'd look like. So what? That's not going to help the movie. It might help the poster, but it ain't going to help the movie. So yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine often with my fellow film fans. Kevin Bennett writes, where'd Kevin go? There he is. Kevin Bennett writes, would most people that go to a movie on a holiday be people that would likely have gone on a weekend anyway? How much different does it make to box office? Well, I mean, I've got no way to answer that. If people were going to go on the weekend anyway, why didn't they go on the weekend? So I'm not really, it makes a huge difference to the box office. A full extra day, that's adding 30% more screenings. When you add the extra day, how much of a difference does it really make? You're adding a full 33% more screenings. So that's going to make a huge significant difference. An absolutely huge difference. So yeah, Kevin, it is significantly different. It does make a big difference. Evan Jenkins writes, DC has the best superheroes. Shame the movies fail. You know what? Marvel has amazing superheroes. But I tend to agree. I think, and this is totally open to interpretation, Batman and Superman are the gold standards of superheroes. In my opinion. It doesn't mean you need to share my opinion. You may have a totally different opinion. Your opinion is every bit as valid as mine. I'm just saying, in my opinion, Batman and Superman are the gold standard of superheroes. And they've got other great superheroes. But you're right. Marvel's outdoing them when it comes to the movies. I mean, that's just, you can look by the audience response, the critic response, the box office response. Across the board, I mean, it's just the way it is. It's unfortunate. That's why I want DC to reboot, because they have great characters. They have arguably the best characters. Their first go at it didn't quite hit the way they wanted it to. Reboot it. You've got these great characters. You can build something great. That's just my thought on it anyway. And Alan Gonzalez writes, I really think World War Z is good, but not at that level of zombie survivor type of movie. So, do you think we will ever have a good zombie movie? Well, I mean, it all depends on what your definition of good is. World War Z is a really good movie. Shaun of the Dead is a really good movie. There are a couple of really good zombies. I'm a little sick of the zombie genre, to be honest with you, but there are some good stuff out there that we already have had those things. So I guess it really all depends on how you want to look at it. All right. I said that Alan Gonzalez's email at 8:17 would be the last one that I would do, and I am. There are a few others that came in. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to ignore your questions. I'm going to copy those, save them, and your questions will be on the next episode of Open Mic, which is tomorrow. So I will start off tomorrow's Open Mic with those questions you guys have sent in after Alan's. So that will wrap it up for me today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the John Campea Show. It's always a pleasure sitting around here talking movies with you guys, having a good time. Listen, don't forget, guys, a little bit later this afternoon, my review for the cutscene movie, the 6+ hour cutscene movie of Uncharted 4 is coming. Keep your eye open for the thumbnail that Ray made of it, because I think it looks amazing. And of course, it's Tuesday, which means it's time for Star Wars Talk Tuesday. That's coming today at 3 p.m. Los Angeles time, 6 p.m. East Coast time. Make sure you come back and join me for that. So that'll do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.